Paltrocast.
Dan, I'm going to say good morning to you. I assume West Coast,
Mountain Time.
Mountain Time. Okay, so morning as well. How's your day going aside from having doing obligated press stuff like this?
Really good. My soft-boiled egg came out perfect. The white was solid. The yolk was runny. What more can start a day with?
Most artists that I speak with are super nocturnal, yet you have that tennis instructor background. Have you always been a morning person who could still stay up for the gigs?
No, I've been usually a night person, but having a kid in of school age, at least during school scheduled times, I'm pretty much a morning person when I'm home now.
Wow. So you actually write a lot of these songs in the morning or the daytime?
Whenever I'm conscious.
Whenever I'm conscious. Well, we were connected because wonderfully some of your catalog is coming to vinyl, and that is supposedly the first time that's happening. How did all that get started?
Um, well, my wife Danielle had the idea, and we were had done some stuff with Grand Phony, and they were into the vinyl as well. Um, I mean, our connection goes back to Viola.
Mm.
I remember the one time you visited, and we were playing stickball out in the street, and you were I mean, it was a heroic, courageous thing that you did, but you dived for a ball in the street and tore up your leg within like 2 minutes of you arriving in town.
I
Anyway,
forgot about that.
uh, I was wondering if you had. I did not forget about that. But anyway, Viola's always been the vinyl guy, and so
Yeah.
I belatedly start hoping to put a dent in my catching up there.
He always has been a vinyl cheerleader.
Yeah,
Right now, I think vinyl sales are outpacing, or somehow they're larger than CD sales. But
yeah,
Mike Viola was making vinyl before
yeah.
anyone wanted to have a record player. Now, were you always listening to vinyl as a fan, as a music listener?
Well, when I was young, I did. I mean, I went to college and carted my big crate of vinyl, but at some point, portability became more important than any vinyl fetish I might have had. Honestly, I thought Mike's thing was a little ridiculous. Over time, it's proved to be prescient, if that's the word. And
Hmm.
now you go to, you know, any festival, and all the cool bands have vinyl and T-shirts, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, not to make this the Mike Viola hour, but I thought that he was nuts originally with his
Yeah,
vinyl obsession.
I
And
did too.
he was telling me something along the lines of digital links and all that are nice and all, but it's not a real album
Right.
until it's on vinyl, until it's a physical thing that you can hold. Have you fully come around to that, or it's like you enjoy the vinyl, but still it's a luxury item?
Well, I mean, I gotta say, holding my own vinyl record in my hands for the first time, it's pretty cool. It feels like it bestows a sort of official hood on a
Official hood
record
too.
more than you know, a little CD that you can shove in your pocket. I mean, that being said, you know, a- as somebody who kind of travels a lot and rolls around, and you know it it's I still haven't I don't know how it's going to be when I'm traveling around with something the size of vinyl, but yeah, I it's pretty cool, I gotta say. I mean, and I hope people will enjoy it to the degree that it hopefully deserves.
Hmm. So, if you can take compliments, I don't know if it's too early to get compliments, but
Not at all. What do you
okay. So,
got?
besides your music itself, I admire how prolific you are and you have been. Sometimes when I interview artists and we're talking about the 15th anniversary reissue special edition, etc., they've probably only written 25 songs since then. In your case, since New American Language, you've probably written 1,500 songs, and I would not be exaggerating if I said that. So does it feel good to be looking back at an album 20-ish years later?
Well, what feels good is I went up to Colorado and rehearsed with the IJBC for the shows that we're going to do, basically playing the album start to finish, which we never did, even in the days when they were my, constant touring band, because there were
Mhm.
always new songs. And we, would leave things behind the moment we recorded them pretty much. But it felt good to go up and do that and sit in the room with them and swap stories and, you know, laugh more than I had in a long time, and simply to play these songs. Some of them I've kept with me and I've played in my shows ever since, but some of them I think because of the kinds of songs they were or are, they needed the whole band.
Mhm.
And so that was really gratifying. I mean, it almost feels like that was the best for me, the best part of the whole thing. And like I look forward to the shows, and it's cool that we're putting the record out, but just getting in the same room with those guys, that for me is the joy of it.
Yeah, and another thing that's very unique about you is when somebody comes to see you live, you don't necessarily do the hits or the songs that the people are expecting to see. It's kind of the music that you're most excited about at the moment. That's what you're going to play.
Well, I think there is a balance, and maybe more now than 20 years ago. I'm able to see that balance and willing to strike that balance. And I know when I go to a show, there's things I want to hear that maybe I'll be disappointed if I don't. But at the same time, I think whoever's on stage has to be excited about what they're putting out, what they're performing, singing, saying, whatever it happens to be.
Mhm.
And that's what you want. That's what you're coming for as well. I remember going to see Billy Bragg years ago, and he had just written a song in the dressing room, and he came out and taped it to the microphone. And I thought, yeah, that's that's really cool. I want to be free enough to be able to do that.
Hmm. And Viola, who we're talking about, regularly writes songs on stage and
Yeah.
winds up performing the whole song as he's come up with it. I think there's a lot of different approaches with all that. But in other words, it's not like you come see Dan Bern and then he plays Tiger Woods and then he plays the Walk Hard soundtrack and they get him to the Greek soundtrack and gets off the stage. It's nothing like that at this point in time.
Well, it might be, but it might not necessarily be planned beforehand that that's what's going to happen.
So this is a 6 week tour. To some people, when they tour, that is all they can focus on. Are you writing? Is there an upcoming release besides the vinyl at the moment?
Well, actually, so I got two records coming out on vinyl. One is New American Language, which is remastered and hopefully sounds better than ever. And we're gonna play a few shows playing those songs. And then at the same time, putting out a record called Starting Over that is all, well, it'll be new material to anybody listening to it. Some of it's way old, some of it's brand new,
Mhm.
which I recorded with a band out of Boston called Jane's Great Dane, and they're going to be touring some of this with me as well. So it's kind of I'm going to have to, uh, sort of refocus after the IJBC shows and get ready to do those other ones. But I'm sure it'll be a blending of both along the way.
Got it. So in other words, no writer's block all these years later. The tracks are still coming.
Yeah, I mean, things continue to happen in the world and in my life, and that always churns things up. And sometimes you'll get lucky and have a project that somebody says, write this song for this spot in the script or write this
Mhm.
batch of songs. And, like we did with Walk Hard, get into the Greek. I had a cartoon called Stinky and Dirty Show for a couple of years. Um, and those things you can't control when they're going to happen, but
Mhm.
they happen regularly enough at this point that um, it always is great. That's when you get those phone calls and you can start getting up and having coffee and churning out songs for some project. I mean, that's gold.
Yeah, it's also admirable because the compliments have to keep coming. How you found success as a cottage industry that I think a lot of people, when they sign to a Sony, they put the record out, it doesn't happen the way that everyone thought. They kind of give up or they go, I got to find another major label or else that kind of a thing. Yet you've been on a self-managed or an independently managed career path for a long time. You find these people like Grand Phony that go, we should do this, and you have a bunch of disconnected things that you all pull together and you make it work. When did you kind of realize that that was going to be a viable path?
Well, I think you kind of continually have to realize it. I mean, it's totally out of necessity in the landscape that we're in and that we've been in for the last 20, 25 years.
Hmm.
It's not to say that I don't still wait and hope and sometimes try to pitch, the big quote unquote legitimate entities to do this or that. But then what usually happens is somewhere along the way, a light bulb goes off once again, over and over and over. This process happens where I go, oh, I got to do this myself or figure out how to do this myself. Some of it's been technology, growing to the point where you don't have to wait for somebody to come along and make a movie that you have an idea for. You can do these things yourself. You can put things out yourself.
Sure.
Uh, yeah, so doesn't mean you don't still wish Columbia Pictures would come along and bang down your door and want to make the movie of your life. But in the meantime, there are these ways.
Yeah. Well, something I don't know about you, when it comes to musical influences and where you come from, you're always thought of as being this quote singer songwriter, this folky icon, this anti-folk icon, that kind of a thing. But I know that there's always been great comedic influences, and you're a baseball guy, and you have the tennis past, etc. So a big sports thing. So meaning the things that you're singing about aren't necessarily the Dan Byrne, the human being. Now, I'm curious in terms of your musical evolution. Did you ever have a metal phase? Were you ever a Van Halen guy, or did you just straight go to Billy Bragg?
Well, what I was a massive Beatles fan
Mhm.
in my young single digit years. Uh,
When you were
before
Iowa, Dan.
Yeah, before I ever even heard of Dylan or Oaks or Woody or any of that stuff. Um, so that that's there and never goes away. Again, with this sort of necessity kinds of thing, when I did hear those guys, the sort of singular guitar toting uh hobo singers, if you will,
Hmm.
um, it suddenly struck me, oh, this is something I can do. I don't have three other guys up here in my room with me to sing harmony and do these other parts, but I don't need that necessarily. So that kind of set me on that course.
Hmm.
Along the way, you just pick up things and you don't lose the other things. So it's Hank and it's the great country folks, it's the great blues folks. I mean, my dad was a classical pianist and composer, and So that's sitting there somewhere. But I guess to answer your question, I'm now that my daughter is into AC/DC and such, Metallica and things like that, I'm getting a very late education in those things, and I'm coming around on that a little bit. But I wasn't really a metal person, no.
It happens to the best of us, I guess you could say. And the last thing I'm super curious about is how Roger Daltrey found you and how he became a fan of this record that we've been talking about that's coming to vinyl. Now, what I know about Roger's, obviously, he's the guy from The Who, and he has a lot of acting credits that people don't really realize, and he's always kept up as a solo career. But at the same time, Roger Daltrey's kind of like Elton John, where he seems to know every album that's coming out and he knows everything about new music, but we don't know how. In your case, how did Roger Daltrey find you? Any idea?
Well, I know that he came to a show I did in the maybe 98, 99 at the Troubadour in LA. Um, I I don't know how maybe Chuck Plotkin steered him there. I never quite figured that one out. A couple years later, he came to a show at the Bottom Line and came backstage and hung with. I was with the IJBC and hung with us a little bit,
Hmm.
and then somehow we were never completely out of touch after that. And then suddenly, well, I was gonna do some openings for him around California, like 7 shows a couple of years ago, and then the Delta variant hit, and
Mm.
that tour didn't happen. But then I got to open for the actual Who in Memphis, and then I did another opening for Roger and his crew and his band earlier this year in Tampa. So I don't really know, but I'm grateful for it, and it was thrilling, and I hope there might be more at some point.
Fingers crossed that
Yeah,
it's interesting to see who opens for the Who. I That doesn't sound right when you say who opens for the Who,
yeah.
but you and Leslie Mendelsohn, there's great taste going on, and that people don't really realize that Pete and Roger are tracking what's happening in the music scene.
I guess so. I guess that's why they're still, doing what they do and doing it relevantly and viably. I can't believe the way he sings. I mean,
Yeah.
there's these, nearing 80 rockers, there's Dylan, there's Mick, but nobody sings like Roger, man. I mean, he gives up nothing to 40, 50 years from when he was recording those songs. I mean, honestly, it's kind of miraculous to me.
And he still has the ridiculous six pack, and you go, what person that age has a six pack and is
Yeah,
singing? So he's bionic. But
I
anyway,
I asked him. He came down. We were chatting. I said, how do you stay in such great shape? He said, well, I used to shag a lot. I don't know if that means he doesn't now, but uh, anyway, take that for what you need.
yeah, I guess it's like Tommy Lee with being a ballerino, the male ballerina as a teen, that's going to impact your physique for the rest of your life in a good way. But the bottom line is, Dan, this is what I've learned: 2 vinyl releases through Grand Phony, 6-week tour, 2 albums coming soon. You never know when there's a new cartoon or Columbia Pictures feature. So maybe the best is yet to come.
Well, that's the way I look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for the many, many years of great art, and really looking forward to what's next, whether it's a solo record, whether it is something you writing in the voice of somebody else, whatever it is. Looking forward, Dan.
Well, thanks, Darren. It's great to see you and chat again.
Paltrocast.